All right, good morning everyone and welcome back to the council meeting that started on Tuesday the 13th of May and we are re-adjourning as now the Thursday the 15th of May 2025. In terms of health and safety, if the alarm sounds, please make your way to the nearest emergency exit. The assembly point is down Devonport Road towards the Strand. Please be aware that this meeting is being live streamed and the video will be publicly available on YouTube. Members, could you please remember to speak clearly into your microphones and only one speaker at a time, and please turn off your mobile phones. I'll ask Councillor Baker if he could please give us an opening karakia. Thank you.
Atamari e homa. Me noi tātou. Ki mihi a te pōranga haua te ao, kia i o nuku, kia i o rangi, kei ngā mata o te ariki. Kei mata nuku, kei mata rangi, ke reira koe tāne te waiora. E ngā maungaru, e ngā wapara whenua, here uta ki tai ki tangaroa e ko koe ko au ko tāua nei whiti ao. Whiti o rāra mai te toki. Haumi e hui e, tai ki e.
Thank you for that. I call for apologies and have an apology from Councillor Rolliston. Do I have a mover and seconder to accept that? Councillor Baker, Councillor Taylor, thank you. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you very much. Just a couple of other items. I'd like to bring from publicly excluded into the public item 13.2, the art gallery refurbishment project update, and I am happy to move to bring that into the public. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Crowther, thank you. All those in favour? Those against? Okay, that is carried. So we will consider that at the end of our public business. And then we will move into publicly excluded to look at one further item. I also just would like to declare a conflict on 11.2, which is authorising international travel for the air travel for the Mayor to go to China. So Deputy Mayor Schooler will take over for that item. Obviously, just thank everyone for their efforts over the last few days. Thank all the members of public that have come in and submitted orally to their submissions to our annual plan. It's been great to hear from the community, understand what our people want from us, and obviously a lot of work to do over the next couple of weeks as we consider all those submissions, both written and oral, and we go to deliberations the week following next as we consider all those and confirm the annual, or start to get a draft annual plan to confirm at the end of June. So the first item on the agenda today is in regard to those submissions that we've heard, and that is Annual Plan 25-26 and the Local Waters Done Well hearing. We have probably covered most of the information we need around the process from here and going into deliberation, so I can take that report as read, but open the floor to any questions of staff if there are any on that report. This is in the agenda starting on page 8. Councillor Crowther.
I'm just wondering if staff can clarify, is the scope of the Local Water Done Well just the feedback, or will there be other updated financial information, which I understand is being crunched by the team over the last couple of weeks?
Through the chair, we're in the process of just getting that extra information peer reviewed at the moment, so we just need to confirm on the timing. So it may be supplementary to the agenda, but we'll seek to get some extra information.
Thank you, Mayor Mahe. So just, and not quite a question of this, but just in terms of the timing of Local Waters Done Well, can we just again have a clarification of what our, I know we're trying to get local waters done well decided at the same time as annual plan, but I understand that's not a statutory requirement. Could you just talk me through those dates again, Christine, that you have shared? But I think most people, we should understand those really clearly. The actual dates that are required for decisions on local waters done well.
So, so the statutory requirement is to have a local water, a waters plan in place, service delivery plan in place by the 3rd of September. But it has to, and that needs to be lodged with the DIA. Our intention was to lodge that as a draft and to get feedback so that we could then incorporate any feedback and lodge our final. So we were working sort of on a July, so get a council decision in May, work on that June, July to DIA back. But it does not have the statutory deadline that you're working through with the annual plan, which under the Local Government Act has to be adopted by the 30th of June. So you do have a little bit more flexibility. It just condenses the timeline on the other end. But if that's something that you would want to consider, then we could just relook at our work program and say, here's how far you could push it out without making an unreasonable impact on that work program to still be able to meet the statutory timeframe. And we could come back to you with that if you wanted.
And so just in terms of the time that the current timeline allows for feedback from DIA after it's been lodged, we're already talking to DIA constantly, right? So we're not expecting that to be a complete rewrite required. It should just be at the moment we've allowed a couple of months, but
yeah, there is a more detailed timeline, which I just don't have at my fingertips at the moment, or I probably could drag it out. So yes, we are talking to DIA as we're going along. We were looking to be in a sort of early tranche to get some more input from them, because the first ones will then basically set a bit of a template for the others, although there is a standard template that we're applying. But as I say, so we've got our timeline based on being earlier to get some feedback from DIA and flow it through, because we were looking at a 1 July 2026 implementation timeline, and that's also something, so that's why many others are looking at 1 July 2027 for an implementation timeline, and that's also something that you can have to think about and change, but that was the timeline we were working to that you previously endorsed. As I say, if you're thinking you want to not necessarily deal with these decisions through your annual plan deliberations, I would just go back and relook at our timetable and come back and say, here's how we could modify it. But I just probably can't do that on the hoof.
And if I may, Me Mahe, I would like to see an option of the timeline to delay it, because I do think we've got some more consideration. We're going to get some more cost information, which I think we need that time to consider. So I would like that as an action if you're happy with that, Christine. Thank you very much.
Right, thank you. Is there any other questions? I think just on, again, from clarification, it is important, because we have heard this through the annual, through the submissions over the last few days, that there is no hurry. That can be correct, but, it is just being aware that the 3rd of September is a hard legislated date that we do have to have a decision by, so we can't just punt it, forever. I think it is important we just are aware that there is actually a date we've got to make a decision. It doesn't have to be the decision, and obviously we've heard some of that discussion over the last few days. I now ask if I can have a mover and a seconder, and to the recommendations, which is receiving the report Annual Plan 25-26 and Local Waters Done Well hearings, receives the written and verbal submissions to the draft Annual Plan 25-26 and Local Waters Done Well consultation, and attachment 7 can be transferred into the open upon agreement with the submitter. You happy to move, Councillor Crowther? Councillor Baker, second that. Thank you very much. Would you like to talk to?
Just thank you to all the submitters who spent the time to submit to council. Thank you to the staff for the massive amount of work that went into this, and I think we're obviously partway through this process for the first time as a council, but I think it's shaping up as a really interesting exercise, and look forward to the deliberations.
Councillor Baker? No. Is there any other discussion? Therefore, I'll put the motion to a vote. All those in favour? Those against? That is carried. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 11.2. I will push my chair back and hand over the reins to our Deputy Mayor, Schooler. Thank you, Mayor
Mahe. So we've got a report on 11.2 on page 17. So this is the Mayor attending a mayoral delegation from New Zealand to China, and the resolution that is required under our elected member expenses policy, that we do need to approve this expense. I'll take the report as read. Have we got any questions on the report? That being the case, I'm comfortable to move the motion. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Schuler, thank you. Any discussion on the business case? Councillor Morris.
I think it's a great opportunity to represent our city in a very important market for the producers in our city. And I would very much like to see the Mayor dressing up as a kiwi fruit. So any footage would be gratefully received. But seriously, no, it's a great opportunity to speak to an important market. I think we have the opportunity here with a mayor who's had a successful career as an Olympian before as well, and going back to China and being able to leverage all of that, and not just his professional sporting career, but the city and also his stature, I think will be a very, very good thing for the city. So I do support it.
Any other comments? So just I endorse those comments, and I think it's the just being able to collaborate for both the mayoral forum, but also going with our with Cespri, and I think in terms of this is really making an opportunity work for economic growth. I hope Wellington's listening, and just understanding that just the connections and relationships and learnings can come back to Tauranga, and I'm sure that will happen. So there being no other comments, I will put this to the vote. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. And I will pass back over to Mayor Mahe.
Thank you very much, and I look forward to reporting back as to what we achieve over there. And the next item is 13.2. We'll just go out of order for this. Obviously, this has come from publicly excluded into public. Just to give a very brief background of this, obviously as part of the Te Manawataki Otapapa project, the art gallery, which is a fully owned council CCO of the council, and we have been undertaking a redevelopment of that building, and in light of when they've ripped off the roof, there has been discovered some issues of some substandard work from previous repairs and upgrades that has meant that there needs to be further money spent on this. So this report, I guess, in summary, obviously this hasn't been in the public domain, is that there is more money required to finish that off and to do some of that remedial work for it to progress. And the ask today from council is to approve some funding to continue out of that. With it being part of a Te Manawa project, part of that funding is to be reallocated from money that has already been approved, but taken out of the Civic Centre project and allocated across to this one, and that is because the Civic Centre project is on track, and there is potentially some money that was in the contingency that won't be spent. So yeah, that is probably just a little bit of a summary of what we're doing, and happy to ask Marty or Mike to give us a little bit more of a rundown on this.
Thank you, Your Worship. I think you might have been reading my notes. We've got Mike here. I'll perhaps, and Bo, but perhaps if I can just sort of just repeat some of the summary, provide a wee bit of context at a high level, and if there's any detail required, Mike and Bo will be able to answer that. But the initial concept, design and development of this project essentially just sought to realign the entrance of the gallery to the precinct. So by and large, it then would become part of Te Manawa Taki o Te Papa and another facility within that entire precinct. And it started off at concept and design level simply as a $1.5 million sum in order to achieve that. The opportunity to close the building down and realign the door also provided an opportunity for the art gallery to think about what other refurbishment and fit out and alterations they may want to make at the same time. And so ultimately the project, as it was finalised in terms of concept, design and cost estimates, came in at $7.55 million. Funding wasn't available, it hadn't been budgeted at that time for that, and so there was an arrangement whereby the land under which the building sits was sold from the art gallery to council, and then there was a contribution from the proceeds of those sales that went towards the 7.55. Construction started in September 2024, and whilst there had been preliminary exploration and trying to understand the quality of the building and how the fit out would develop once they got into the building proper and started stripping it back, the standard of the building and the quality of workmanship was found to be wanting, which drove additional costs. On top of that, there was further refurbishment and fit out work included, and ultimately we've ended up in a situation where, with the evolution of the project and the construction work that we've uncovered, we have a $2.1 million shortfall, of which $460,000 is contingency within that 2.1. So we've been through a process of value engineering with the Art Gallery Trust. We've also looked for other funding sources. We've set up a project oversight group to ensure that all parties are aware of the other situation of the other parties, to make sure that there could be some sort of fair share and equitable contribution towards the shortfall. And we feel as if we've pretty much exhausted that, subject to an ongoing conversation with a construction company that was involved at a previous time. And so we're at a point now where, in order to complete the project, keep the workers on site and to have the project completed by August this year, we essentially need endorsement and support from council to expend an additional $2.1 million on this project, or up to $2.1 million. We're not seeking additional funding from throughout the suite of Site A, which has a $306 million budget. The Te Manawa Taki o Te Papa Board are confident that we can deliver this additional work that's required within that 306. So essentially we're not necessarily asking for additional funding on top of the 306, we believe we can deliver this project within that overall suite. So happy to answer any questions, but more likely to defer to Mike to detail.
Councillor Schuller.
Thanks. Through you, to either of you, just so that, just for clarity, the 2.1 includes the 460, which is existing contingency, and then the residual is the 1.64. Is that right?
That's correct. So the actual works that have been...
Mike.
Sorry, just turn on your microphone.
Yeah.
This is all very new.
Mike. Yeah.
That's still not on, sorry.
Do I need to get out
There
of
you
the
go.
queue?
Yeah, I know. First time in your new chambers, so just having to learn the new technology. Yes, so you're correct. So the actual cost of the remedial work at this stage, as it's been costed and it's been verified by the QS, is around the 1.6 million, and the QS has recommended that we also retain a $464,000 contingency for any other issues that may arise. I would just like to say that the building has been through a complete deconstruction, and if you go into the building now, there's tens of tradesmen in the building, and it's being put back together. And at this stage, it looks like there should not be any other call on any major components of that building.
Councillor Baker.
Hi, morena, tēnā kōrua. Māori, can you just provide clarity for elected members? Because we heard through the grapevine that at a point in time, I believe under the Commission, there was a restriction put on the art gallery to apply for funding of a capital nature, and is that restriction still in place?
Yes, there'd been a discussion between the Commission and senior staff and the art gallery that the focus for fundraising across the city was to be the civic precinct, of which the art gallery was part of, and what we didn't want were two parties essentially going to the same funders. So whilst there's nothing formal and in writing, that conversation did occur, and by and large it's been complied with.
Supplementary? Question for clarity, because it may not need to be a recommendation, but considering we're in a good place, can we just confirm with the art gallery that that no longer applies to them?
Yes, I think that the conversation we're having with the art gallery at the moment, that there still needs to be a coordinated approach to fundraising, and so I think there needs to be alignment and an understanding and coordination about who and which party, either the art gallery or Te Manuataki, seek funding from, so that we're not queuing up at the same door. So
I think we can agree with a coordinated approach. I think to answer your question though, there was never a restriction, they just had to coordinate, is that? Yeah. Councillor Crowther.
Yeah, thanks. I'm wondering, has Tauranga City Council had a conversation with the art gallery around the difference between their contribution to the upgrade and the amount that was paid by the council to the art gallery? So the $500,000 that is sitting there, presumably in the bank account or wherever it is, at the art gallery, and are they going to contribute that towards this 2.1?
The answer is yes, we've had that conversation. What's sitting in the background though is concerns about the roof, and whilst there had been a sum of money allocated to repair the roof, we're at a point in time now where I believe a decision has been made to replace the roof, because ultimately it would need to be done at some stage in the not too distant future, which would essentially cause another shutdown of the building. And so the Art Gallery Trust were holding that as contingency in the event that they've had to replace the roof. I believe a decision has been made to do that now, and so essentially those funds will be expired largely by the replacement cost of the roof. So,
Follow up, do we know exactly what that is going to cost? Like, has the art gallery done that analysis, and can they tell us?
Yes, we do have reports which have been done, and there's various solutions. The preferred solution at this stage is a membrane overlay, and that is in the region of between 350 and 400,000. The other part is that the art gallery have also commissioned additional works to. An example of that is additional IT cabling and suspension points within the ceiling for the hanging of art, and so they are meeting that cost out of that additional budget.
Councillor Scola?
Just in terms of your comment, Marty, that when the builders went and had a look at what was done, that we found that the previous construction was wanting. We have talked about this before, because I understand the builders that had built that are still parties to contract with Tauranga City Council. Can you just give us a view on those negotiations that you've had and where they've got to, please?
yeah, so I actually don't know whether that construction company is doing any work at the moment for us, but they certainly are very active throughout town and want to be working in the city for a long time to come. And so I think the best way I could describe the conversation is that it's ongoing, and that there's not necessarily complete agreement or alignment in the facts. And so we'll keep the conversation going with a view to, I think, finding a reasonable solution. Okay, we're doing this in a manner that really the statute of limitations for any liability for previous construction work is expired, well expired, and so we're relying on the goodwill and arguably the relationship and opportunities for the future for this party to come to the party.
Thank you, and I think just a message from us that please, TCC's also, we are trying to be prudent with spending. We need to be able to say, well, we need to have relationships that we have with people need to have served us well in the past as well.
Councillor Kurak.
Yes, thank you. I had the same question, but in terms of the negotiations, if we can call it that, or conversations, would a 50-50 approach seem reasonable to you? I think it would seem reasonable from my perspective. I can imagine the council's perspective as well. Is in your mind, what has been a figure potentially that you've been talking about?
Something more than zero at this stage. So I don't know that I don't know that we can necessarily put a figure on this. First of all, there needs to be an agreement, acknowledgement, and acceptance that the party has responsibility and liability, and so. Look, I'm happy to report back where this lands, but at this stage, there's some work to be done.
Yep, Councillor Kurak.
So in terms of liability, it's my understanding, given the statute of limitations, there is no legal liability, but a liability does, in terms of the moral rather than legal, I would feel as a contractor that there would still be some liability there, given that it was clearly a structural deficiency. And so I would like to put a figure on it, and potentially I could add a resolution here to that effect, in terms of a position of this council, but that we'd be seeking something in the order of 50%. That's where I'm sort of heading at the moment, but yeah. So in your response, you know, if we were to pass a resolution around that, would that be helpful in terms of your discussions, ongoing discussions?
Probably unhelpful, actually, because there needs to be an acceptance, and this is essentially goodwill. And so, to me, it would be, it might be a symbolic resolution, but I don't think it would be helpful.
Is there any further questions of staff? I think obviously we can see it in the report, but I would like to just put it on the record. You know, have we looked at every avenue to ensure that this is, we're confident that this is as small a amount that we can spend to get the outcome that we need to get to?
Yeah, I think we have spent the last 4 months working very closely with the builders, the architects, the Tauranga Art Gallery Trust to identify potential savings, to identify potential value engineering options. We've agreed on a number of variation value engineering options. We're still working through that process. It is a continual process, and we will deliver the best outcome for the council in relation to the final cost of the project.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes, I can guarantee that this is one of the more closely scrutinised $2.1 million as part of this overall process. So we understand the sensitivities around it and the manner in which this came to light, and so you can be assured that we've done everything possible at this stage to try and ensure that value has been engineered and the costs have been scrutinised, and so the oversight group have come together and spent time going through that process as well.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. That goes through all our questions. Therefore, we've got a resolution, and I think we can just remove G on that, as we've already put this into public. Therefore, I ask for a mover and seconder of this resolution. Councillor Roseboom, thank you. Councillor Schuller, thank you. Councillor Roseboom, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, I would, Mayor, and thank you very much for this opportunity. I'd just like to extend my support of having worked on projects not of this size but of similarity, where you're trying to retrofit existing buildings, and when you pull the roof off, all sorts of things appear, and the strain that it puts on your budget and trying to retrofit a building is challenging. Appreciate the efforts of all the staff in finding a solution for this and staying within an existing budget by moving things around. It is very challenging, and once you start retrofitting buildings, all sorts of unknown events occur and puts pressure on the entire system, and not more so for the contractors actually doing the job, because it's had a big impact on them. The delay in this funding has had some effect on them as well. I'd just like to support everyone that's had anything to do and support their efforts to find a solution for this within the existing budget going forward. I hope this is completed on time and to a level of which the city will be proud of in the future. Thanks.
Thanks for that. Councillor Schuller. Councillor Crowther.
Right. I have concerns about how this rolled out. I know there are some things that are locked into the building itself, and I understand that we have to fund that because the art gallery doesn't have enough money. But I think the lack of transparency around this, and I have no idea, I'm not pointing fingers in any particular direction, but I know for a fact that people in my community in Otamotai and other parts of the city told me about this well before I found out through the council. And I think when you have a CCO doing a project like this where there's known risks, to actually, and I think it's on the public record at our 23rd of October meeting last year, where I'd like to thank one of our GMs, Gareth Wallace, for answering very transparently around it. But we were told 3 months later, that by the art gallery representative that it was not known at that time, and that it was only in December that we found out about it as a council. Well, it's obviously that wasn't the case. It's on the public record. And I think as councillors, I think we are entitled to find the stuff out as soon as possible, as practicable. And I think as we've worked with the Te Manawa o Te Papa board, the timeline has become apparent. And it's very clear that it's taken months and months and months for details to get through to us. But the information that I've got from the community has always preceded what I've got through the council. I think that's a real issue. And I would like to highlight that people in that arts and culture sector, a number of people knew about this. Even many months before, people were highlighting the risk around that, the known risk for this building. And I find it quite strange that the budget wasn't developed with a bigger contingency. When people in the community, some of them are construction experts, an ex-property developer, they were saying that we needed to have done more work on this. And it raises the question of whether a CCO and the council are working well together around this. So I would like to propose an amendment, an extra, well now to be G, to actually make this as transparent as we can and actually have the Tauranga Art Gallery Trust reimbursement amount become 3.8 million, and the additional 500,000, or if it can be less, we heard a figure of 300 and something thousand needed for the roof, that be funded as a separate piece of funding through the Te Manawa o Te Papa contingency, just so it won't make any difference to the final bottom line, but it will make it transparent as to how much the council itself is contributing, because I know there's concern in that art gallery community that there is not enough transparency around how much the council and the ratepayers are putting into this project. I think it would be far clearer to have it in that budget, that the full purchase of the land goes towards their contribution, and then if they need extra for a cost blowout that in the view of many people in that community they should have forecast, then they come back to us and ask for that money with a quote saying this is how much the roof is going to cost. So if there's any support for that, I can frame up some wording. So I guess it's to have G to amend the agreement to TAGT reimbursement to 3.8 million, and then to have interim funding of whatever it is, 1.6 million from Te Manawa o Te Papa contingency, and then there'd have to be another H, which would be for Tauranga Art Gallery Trust to apply for additional funding from Tauranga City Council for works to improve the roof, maintain, replace the roof.
May I do a little point
Yes.
of order, Ethan?
Yes, very welcome.
If the councillor produce the resolution in writing.
Please continue while I do this if you wish.
And if it helps the mayor, I'm happy to speak to the substantive while that councillor's doing that, just in terms of efficient meeting proceedings. That would be great. Yeah, may I? Thank you. Yeah. Again, thank you. This is the second item which has been transferred from confidential into the open, so I just want to acknowledge that and the transparency that brings. That is a good thing for the city. Of course, it behooves us to ensure that when we bring an item from confidential into open, that we don't prejudice the ratepayer's position in any way. So I think we need to always be cognizant of that. In terms of the deficiencies that were identified, it's my personal view that a construction company of good standing would be horrified by what I saw as a layperson, and that a construction company of good standing would want to put that right as soon as possible, because that's not a good thing in terms of reputation.
Thank you for that. Is there anyone else that would like to speak to the substantive, or you want to wait till, yeah. I guess I'll give you my views. Look, this is pretty disappointing to have a budget that hasn't been stuck to, and you know we're all about delivery. I think you know, I've seen this as most of the councillors have in person. I understand the issues and also understand the risks that you take when you retrofit fit a building. You know, sometimes there are things that come to light that potentially you didn't expect. You know, from the positive side of things, you know, because of the systems that are in place within our delivery committee around the Te Manawa Otapapa project, this is not an additional cost to the ratepayer. It is coming out of the $306 million budget because that is on budget or even under budget on time, and we have contingency from that project still available to allocate to this. So that is a win, but that's not looking over the fact that this is $2.1 million that we would have preferred not to spend. So I think that is something very important. That you know, this is disappointing. It's not abnormal for a project of this size that these sort of issues come to light. I am confident that our team has done a very good job at trying to find every saving, and this is the best we could do, and obviously I'd love to see that contingency protected as much as possible as we go forward, so we can you know, effectively have another $460,000 coming back, you know, that wasn't spent if we can do this in a good manner. So you know, we are where we are, and we have to accept that. You know, I think the strategies that we have put in place have been successful in this case, in the fact that this is not an additional ask of the ratepayer, and you know, I do support you know, giving this and getting this project finished and another asset to our city centre and the Te Manawa project. So yeah, that's where I sit. Are we ready to go on the amendment? So we've got an amendment ahead of us, which is to amend the funding agreement to the Tauranga Art Gallery Trust reimbursement 3.8 million. That's a change from the 3.3. Yep, sorry. So that's an increase from 3.3 to 3.8. Plus additional TCC contribution of 1.6 million from Te Manawa Otapapa contingency. to encourage the Tauranga Art Gallery Trust to apply for additional funding for the roof replacement, with funding to come from Te Manawa-Taki O Te Papa contingency. So we have that motion moved by, the amendment moved by Councillor Crowther and supported and seconded by Councillor Kurak. Councillor Crowther, would you like to speak to your amendment?
Yeah, just briefly, that I know the numbers in the end will probably work out the same, although potentially not, because we might save money depending on what the difference is between the 500,000 and the actual cost of the roof replacement. So that's one benefit to council. The other benefit to council is that we will be very transparent, and it will address, somewhat retrospectively, but it will address the issues that many in our community have spoken to me about this have had, which is that it needs to be very clear that the ratepayers and other funders of Te Manawa-Taki o Te Papa are significantly contributing to this. And it may seem like a small thing, but to a number of those people, I think that transparency will be very meaningful. So I'd encourage my colleagues to support this without any cost to council and potential savings to council.
Councillor Kurak.
No, I do support it because it's about transparency and appropriate allocation of costs where they should sit, and to improve the understanding of the community around such figures.
Does anyone else like to? This is just to the amendment, so if we just talk to the amendment.
Are we able to unilaterally change an agreement that includes another party?
Yeah.
Thank you, Wish. Well, this would be a situation where we have an agreement, it's been signed and it's been executed. The facts are public. Perhaps the way that they've been assembled might be a bit confusing, but in terms of transparency, there would be no issue with assembling these facts in a manner which are completely transparent and open to the public. I think a resolution like this would be essentially determining on behalf of the CCO, that's an appointed board, on how they allocate and use their own funds. And so whilst council can pass this resolution, I think it would be usurping and or undermining, I think, the role of the board of the CCO and how they conduct their business and manage their funds. If transparency is the key here, I'm sure that we can assemble this in such a way that anybody, including the common person, can understand exactly where the funds have come from and what they've paid for and how much the city is contributing towards this. But that'd be my comments. There is an agreement, it's been executed. To a degree, this would be trying to reverse something which has actually already happened.
Councillor Crowther.
Can I amend my amendment? It's a very good point. I guess because I was doing it a bit on the fly, waiting for the answer from staff, so I apologise for that. But I guess if I was to reword it to, work with Tauranga Art Gallery Trust to create an updated funding, I don't know, what do you call those, stack, updated funding stack that could be publicly available is what I'm looking for. Because I think that's the key to it. I'm not worried about changing an agreement retrospectively, so if I can tweak that wording to just say to work with TAGT to create an updated funding stack, does that take away all the little risks?
Absolutely. I think quite simply is that undertake to make public the funding mechanisms and sources paying for the art gallery upgrade and or variations. Sorry, there's a few words there. I don't know whether I can repeat that.
So this would just be a G now, so get rid of those other ones and just put in.
So take away both of them.
Yes.
And just replace it with one.
Yes. Yep. And if we could, the one that I see there, you got that one?
So,
Rather than to work, I think it's, I think that, can you put up the wording in the
Yep, just done it now.
Yeah, I know. Okay, so to get rid of the other one.
Take this away.
And then put TAGT in full. With a TAG, so it should say.
so is that what?
Refurbishment. Is that what you were wanting? Councillor Crowther?
No, like I'd sent through what I thought was an amendment that would address matters. I should say, sorry, no, I'd sent through an amendment to the amendment, which I hoped would address Marty's concerns, but still convey that the key issue is to work with them to get to the point where it is transparent that the 3.8 million can be contributed plus an additional 1.6, plus they can apply under H for the cost of the roof.
So you're still looking to amend the agreement that we have with them. That's what you're.
Effectively, we are anyway. If by passing this, that's why I wanted to do it now, because we're passing an amendment today to give more money. So the other option is just to, I would vote against giving the money until we actually engage with the art gallery.
Well, we're not, because in the agreement it says that they have an upper limit of X amount, no matter what the cost of the development is. So that's what the agreement
No
says.
matter what the cost. Okay, that's not what.
Well, they're capped at. The agreement caps them at 3.3 million towards the agreement. So.
But, well, then we're opening up a whole extra thing, because when I'd asked Te Manuataki o Te Papa board about that, then we had an answer that this is a negotiable amount.
Well,
so
everything's
is it negotiable, or is this?
Well, everything's negotiable, but we've got an agreement. So, but that amendment doesn't achieve that. So, what your amendment needs to say, we want to renegotiate the current agreement that for Tauranga Art Gallery Trust to reimburse up to 3.8 million. That's what you're asking, I believe.
Yeah, and to also encourage them to apply for the actual cost of the roof, rather than just to commit to the 2.1 million, to be the 1.6 million plus the roof, which will be a different number.
Perhaps the resolution should be to require the Chief Executive to make public, in a factual sense, the costs of the costs of the works, the various funding sources, in a way that it's clearly understood by all.
Well, I think Councillor Crowther's trying to achieve a different outcome. That's
half of it. The other half is, if the roof is really going to cost, let's say it costs 350,000, I don't see why we are contributing an extra 150,000. I'd rather just do what we need to do to honour the agreement, and then when it comes to the roof, which I understand the roof replacement is not part of the agreement. That's the point I'm trying to get at.
Well, the agreement is for the Tauranga Art Gallery Trust to contribute 3.3 million to the development.
Yeah, but my understanding was that the roof was, from the board, Te Manuataki o Te Papa board, that the roof replacement was not part of the original.
No, it wasn't part
scope.
of. And it's not part of the 2.1 million either.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's a completely separate figure. So I think we're getting our wires crossed here.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, I would like to contribute, well, the other way to put it is I'd like to contribute 1.6 million, but then if there's no decision to be made, are you saying there's absolutely no decision? This was just then I'm
No,
struggling to
there's-
figure out what we're actually deciding then.
Well, we're deciding to contribute $2.1 million more than we have already contributed to this project.
I would like to contribute 1.6 million plus the cost of the roof, up to a maximum of 500.
The roof is not anything part of this. This is two separate issues. So what your issue is we paid $600,000 more than we are asking them to contribute.
Understand.
Right? So that's what your issue is, right? I have an issue with that as well.
500,000. Yeah.
Well, it was 600, but from the purchase of the land was 600,000 more than what we asked them to contribute towards the cost of this upgrade.
Is that figure correct, Marty? I thought it was the 500.
Well, look, I thought it was 3.8, of which they contributed 3.3. Mike, is it?
That's mine.
Yeah.
I thought.
And so I guess just getting back to the point of this was that when I asked the question about why isn't the art gallery contributing from their own funds more, I'm of the understanding the only reason they're not doing that is because they need money for the roof. But that part of the issue with the community is that the art gallery didn't make that clear at the time. So if they knew all along, as is alleged, that they needed this money for the roof, my point is come and ask us for money for the roof as well. Like, do it formally, do it as part of a formal process where the CCO comes to the council as the funder and make that as transparent as possible. But otherwise, there will still be potential surplus for the art gallery. I don't think that's appropriate if the ratepayers are funding this extra cost that was known about many months ago and was not disclosed initially to the councillors.
Would it be helpful if through this process the reserves of the art gallery were made public, so that, and essentially it's public information, so if our concern is that the art gallery is sitting on a bundle of cash and that they should be contributing to more, well then we just need to be transparent about that. And I'm sure that the board have a building and liabilities that they need to consider into the future, and I think that's something that I think the board should speak to. I think it would be unwise for us to make decisions about how the board should spend whatever reserves they have if we don't know and understand what those liabilities or contingencies that they need are.
Yeah, I think we're dealing with two different issues here. If we're asking the art gallery to contribute any more than 3.3, we're asking for a renegotiation of the funding agreement. Yeah. Whereas I kind of, it's one of those things where we've kind of got to where we've got to, and yeah, I agree probably with the comments that we can deal with this at a later date through when they apply for any funding. We can ask them, what is your reserves, and you know, do you need those funds? I think that would be a way to deal with this going forward. You know, rather than effectively, I don't think it's particularly good faith, you know, whether we agree with it or not, to go back and renegotiate a contract that you know, as a council we willingly signed, even though that was a previous council. So it's kind of one of those things. You know, if you think you've got the support to go and renegotiate that contract, then we just need to make sure that amendment talks about renegotiating a contract, but we're not just updating a funding stack. We're renegotiating an agreement we have with the Tauranga.
Well, if that's your preferred approach, I'm happy to go along with that. I guess the issue that I see is that we need to get this much clearer and to have transparency over what the art gallery has or has not got sitting in its bank account, what it has or has not got to spend on a roof upgrade, and the potential for other loans to come from council, which is another allegation that is happening, and then the actual operating grant from the council. So if that can all be put as a package, I'll be happy to withdraw with the seconder's approval, and that the chief executive, because I think what we need is a much clearer understanding by anyone who's interested of what the finances look like at that end.
I support transparency, and I support understanding all the issues. I think ultimately, as a CCO, they are an extension of council. So in that regard, the money that they have, obviously, notwithstanding that they have also raised private money, and we just have to consider that. But I agree they shouldn't be sitting on ratepayers' money if it's not required. But I think that's a process that we can take going forward, is understanding where that money's coming from, what their liabilities are, what they need, and I do agree. Even the agreement that we did with the land, a peppercorn rent. My personal view would have been to actually have a market rent with our grant covering that. Just from a pure transparency, so you can see that whole whole funding stack. But in saying that, we are where we are, and those agreements were done before we came in. So we can certainly. I'm happy to support going forward that we get that transparency. I just think this is a little bit bad faith if we're trying to renegotiate an agreement that a previous council has signed with a party. So.
We just need the agreement of the majority of the councillors to withdraw that amendment.
Okay. You're happy to withdraw? Yeah. Okay. Do we have majority support to withdraw that amendment? Yep. Okay. That's withdrawn. Yep. Councillor Kura.
Hopefully I might make some more progress with my proposed amendment. So around that, the contribution toward the remediation, the structural remediation cost, and I'd like to move a resolution to the effect of that the Chief Executive report back to Council the outcome of the negotiation around around a contribution toward the structural remediation costs at a council meeting in July. Just looking at Chief Executive, indicative what would be, in terms of my resolution, an appropriate time frame to report back.
I'm happy to report back in July.
Thank you.
That may need a number of report backs, but we can discuss that in July.
What I'm after is a formal process of reporting back.
Yep. Okay, so we've got that moved. Have we got a seconder to that amendment? Does anyone wish to speak? Wish to speak to your amendment? No? Pretty self-explanatory. Anyone else like to speak to the amendment? You want to speak?
Just in terms of discussion that's already been had, in terms of where or where not discussions may be at, is that not premature that if we just ask for a report back on discussion, but I think that's maybe premature to even be asking for contribution at this stage, in my opinion. We don't know that we need to leave this to the CE and in good faith get the reports back, but I think it's premature to be asking. We don't know the state of that discussion and ongoing, and they'll be in good faith as well. We know that the statute of limitations is over, so I'm just concerned that that's leading us down a way that may not continue good faith discussions between the CE.
Just hand over to a CEO.
Look, the outcome of this may not necessarily be monetary. And so I just think it might be prudent to allow me to have the conversations or continue the conversations and then report back to council in a manner that I think it might be appropriate for the outcome. Whilst it might feel clean that there's a monetary contribution, that we're dealing with an organisation that may be able to contribute to the city in many ways.
The resolution doesn't specifically mention financial. It's just reporting back from a negotiation. And I'd like to have that formalised in terms of a resolution and, and coming back to this council at a council meeting rather than informal. I think we need to refer to the construction company.
No, I don't think we should.
Clear who we're negotiating with. It's clear, yeah.
I just think we need to be a wee bit careful here that we're talking about something in public that there's a dispute of facts as well, and I just think we need to be careful of our own liability here in overstepping the mark.
Right, we have an undertaking, I think whether we have or don't have this resolution, that the Chief Executive will progress negotiations or discussions. I think it's probably more appropriate term with the parties. So I will put the amendment to the floor and see if we have support for it. Is there anyone else sorry, you did want to speak?
I'm slightly triggered. I'd love to play poker after this meeting with colleagues. Can I please, can we, when we're having discussions on these sorts of things, can we just please ensure that we're not prejudicing the ratepayers' position? And I would just ask all members to consider what they say in the chamber in a public context. Transparency is absolutely phenomenal, but we are the guardians of the ratepayers' putia, and we need to be very jealous for the ratepayers' funds. Please, team.
Right, is there any other discussion around this? All right, I'll now ask for a vote and ask all those in favour. Please raise your hands. This is for the amendment.
For the amendment?
Yeah.
We've got Crowther.
For the amendment.
Put your hand up, Steve.
Crowther.
I'm just scratching my head at the moment.
Correct. Anybody else?
Are those against?
I'm in favour of that.
You are in favour.
And Morris? Yeah. Crowther, correct, and Morris in favour? Yeah.
Are those against?
1, 2, 3. Yeah. And what's Councillor Baker's against? Everyone else against?
Is an undertaking.
Yeah.
And
It can be unwritten, I think, is most appropriate in this case. All right. That motion is that amendment has failed. So we go back to the substantive, and I believe Councillor Taylor, you may want to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. Two things. The first one that we shouldn't lose sight of is we need to get the art gallery back in business. Its supporters, the staff, the organisation have had a delay in getting their business into their new premises and operating again, which I think is the the main thing we're all here for is to make sure that that happens as soon as we can. So I'm supportive of the motion, and also just like to make the point that we have an oversight committee now working with the art gallery to get this thing done. Rest assured, as one of the members of that oversight committee, that I will be looking at where we spend the money and how it goes from here. The second thing I want to bring to everyone's attention is, and I think someone else alluded to it earlier, when we do these projects that are existing buildings that we're pulling to bits and moving to renovate, we are going to have issues like this going forward. So I think we need to be mindful of how invasive we do the initial assessment of these buildings. I look ahead and we've got Bay Court coming up for a bit of a redo as part of this project. And I think we need to be very, very vigilant in how we assess the project at the outset, which may stop a lot of these things happening as we progress the project. So, yeah. But my main thing is, let's get this building back in operation and get the art gallery doing what they do best.
Councillor Scholar.
Thanks, Mayor Mahe. I agree with my colleagues' comments. But if we look at the whole process of this, I think we have to take some learnings. We are looking at what our risk profile needs to be. We have to acknowledge the risks up front, as Councillor Rosenberg talked about, and Councillor Taylor also said, when we've got issues, potential issues, we need to make sure we are assessing the risks of those in what we put forward. But we also need to acknowledge that we have to be transparent when things don't go right, and it's something we are needing to say because it's really important. Things do go wrong, but please don't hold it back. We've got to have better transparency. We need to know when financial risk is happening. We hear a lot about, we've inherited quite a lot of decisions that we are struggling to get through. And if there was better transparency up the front, potentially better assessment of the risk, we might be in a better position now. So it's, and I think, because to me this is saying, how is council relating to a CCO? A CCO is a council-controlled organisation, but sometimes I think we need to define a little bit better by us and by the expectations of the CCO. What does that mean? Because if there's not trust to report when there are issues right up front before the community tells us, then that's not telling me that it's a great structure to have, and we're looking at putting all of our water assets into a CCO when I don't think we've quite worked out how a CCO and council operate to the benefit of everyone, and we certainly need that when we get to waters. So I'm supportive of this. I'm disappointed we are having to go into contingency. When we approved the 306 million for Te Manawa-Take o Te Papa, we had confidence from the CEO that we had a board that was going to deliver on time and spec on budget. We did have hopes through the Mayor, I believe, that we might be able to not use all the contingency up, and we already are using that for other reasons. So I'd rather not be in this position, but I'm supportive of the resolution. But I think we do need to think about, we need to get better at understanding what we expect from a CCO, what we get from a CCO, and whether that's a structure that actually is a council-controlled organisation or not.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this? Yep, Councillor Scholar.
Second, thanks, Mayor. Yeah, I'll just agreeing with the Mayor, the Deputy Mayor, and Councillor Taylor. I suppose the consideration in the big picture is, the size of contingencies, and we know, and it's been quite well explained, that things do happen in these retrofit buildings, and so I suppose as long as we're confident the processes around initially setting those contingencies, it's good that in this situation we've got the ability to do what we're doing. It is disappointing, but that's the other background information, is to make sure that contingencies are fit for the type of risk that might be in front of us. So, it can be dealt with. Thank you. Support there.
Thank you. Councillor Rosenboom, would you like to finish up?
Thank you, Mayor. No, I'd just like to support the comments of the Deputy Mayor and Councillor Taylor. Projects of this scale do run into issues, and it's how we deal with them, and you have to be upfront when things aren't quite going to plan. When you rip the cover off something and it's not quite what you expected to see, you need to be very open about how you deal with it. But in the initial phase, it's coming up with options is the key part, and then how you fund those options, and then how you get a result at the end of it. But no, well done to all the staff for getting us to this point, and I support the current recommendation as it is.
So now we will put to the council the resolution that we are discussing. I'm not going to read it out because it is quite long, and I ask all those in favour. Those against? That's carried. Thank you very much. Now we move on. Sorry, that ends the public part of the meeting. So I do call for a mover and seconder to go into publicly excluded. Councillor Roseboom, thank you. Councillor Schooler. I ask all those in favour of going into publicly excluded? Those against? That is carried. Thank you. We are